I appreciate your thought about AI and other technology that's threatening many jobs and human functions. At least that's we think the trend is going to be.
Yeah.
Does this advancement actually, or even out, help or even out the shrinking population size just in time? So if we're looking at Japan and say, well, dying off, or Korea and or Singapore, what have you, and that they don't want immigration in the case of Japan for sure, and I think that's true in Korea as well. They're far more ethnocentric in a society standpoint. When AI actually just it's like heaven sent. Great, now we can do more with less people.
Right.
Does that actually offer them an advantage because they've been thinking along that way? They're thinking in a way that they can implement, right, in a society in a practical way because they just have lack of people. What's your thought on that compared to somebody like right now in the United States?
Yeah. I think it's entirely possible that it can help offset some of the loss. I'm always careful to use negative words, but the loss and the shrinking of the working age population, because you can gain efficiency. So to the extent that it can help us gain efficiency, then it does make up for some of that. And we're always looking to gain in terms of efficiency, whether or not we have a growing or shrinking population. So, I think at this point, it's very early for us to tell the harm versus the gain. And I don't even mean the harm like robot overlords taking over. I think about things like, older people in every society are the least technologically savvy of the generations, and they're very vulnerable to scams, and AI can make them even more vulnerable to scams. So I think, as long as when we have these conversations about AI and aging, we think about both the pros and the cons of it, even in terms of, I think a lot about older workers and how do you retrain them to keep them in the workforce, depending on how AI turns out in terms of, what flavor we have here. Maybe it's going to be even harder to train up an older group of workers, 65 to 75 years old, to be comfortable using this kind of technology to stay on in the workforce. But also, it could be that they replace some of the youth workers, because we've seen that. And that's the interesting thing when we look at these aging societies, they often have really high youth unemployment.
Yes.
And so it's hard to make sense of that. And so I think it is just too soon to tell in terms of AI. There's a lot of promise for offsetting some of the strains of aging, but the knockoff effects of it could actually be make an even worse situation economically, socially.
So I think you're hitting on some really important micro aspects. The actual we have to live within that society, and how does that reality hurt us and help us? But from a macro standpoint, where a society is getting older, in other words, they are having fewer portion of their population being quote unquote a productive portion of their career, or human capital is what we used to call it, right? Human capital is coming down faster than we thought. But if some of that can be made up through productivity, through AI, through robotics, through lots of other things that, in fact, they're talking about AI creating their own AI. It's like computers generating their own sort of computing. So that is yet to be experienced and yet to know. But does that give the fast aging society an equalizer to the less fast aging society? Is really what I'm trying to think about.
I think it could, but it's one of many factors that could be an equalizer because, again, with this political scientist hat on, I know it's never just about the technology being available. You talked about human capital. I actually think that's incredibly important because what about the education system? I live in a setting in the United States where there's like a 50% high school graduation rate, so technology is not the only thing that can give you an advantage. Your education system, the types of match between your skills of your people and the industries that are there, that can also give you an advantage. So I would put it on the menu. And that's the way I think about a lot of these things with aging, that there's never going to be this one thing, but there's a menu that we have to build this resilience in a society. And I think strategic use of technology openness to using it, investment in it is absolutely one of those factors that can help a society be more resilient in the face of aging.